What's happening?
Okay.
I don't know how to do it. Like, what you want me to say?
It's fine. It's already going, so we're just gonna go. Okay, so you should have some blank space down at the bottom of your page. So we're gonna go ahead and draw in just a little helpful cheat sheet there. So go ahead and draw in our x and y coordinate plane. Everyone see where I am? You just have some blank space at the bottom of your page. We're just gonna draw in some notes there. Okay, so my x coordinate and y axis, sorry, not coordinate, axis. We're going to fill in there. So when we're talking about rotations, there are 4 types that we do, or 4 different degrees that we rotate. One that we just did was how many degrees? What did we just do? 90. So we can do 90 degrees. What's another one we can do? They go in increments of 90. So it's 90, then 180, then 270, good, and then 360. So those are the 4 types that we're going to be doing. There's obviously all the degrees in between, but the 4 main types are here. So remember, if they're positive, what direction does that tell me? Positive are, we either say counterclockwise or clockwise, so which one is this? This is counterclockwise. So all of these positive values are counterclockwise, which is to the left, against the hands, like not the way that the hands of a clock go. So think about, like, if I just turn once, that's going to be 90 degrees, twice would be 180, 3 times would be 270, and then 4 times would be all the way back around, which is exactly, the same as how we started. So you can think about this being like a fourth of a turn, or 1 turn, half of a turn would be 2 turns. I rarely use 270 degrees, and we'll talk about that in a second. 270 is the same thing as negative 90 degrees, and we'll see that in a second. What do we say negative means?
Right.
Clockwise, good. So I'm just going to put that in parentheses. So we're making some little cheat sheet down here for us. All right, so let's say we had a figure. I'm just going to draw a triangle in my first quadrant. And if you guys are still on the patty paper, go ahead and catch up with us here because this is important. You can always finish that later. So the way that I teach these is you have to know the quadrants. So do you guys remember these all have numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4? And it kind of goes in a C shape. So quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each of those has like an assigned value or like an assigned positive. So these are all of my positive x's, all of my positive y's. So we're going to label that positive. You guys remember this from Algebra 1?
Yes.
Yeah. So that should be a review. What's quadrant 2? What's the signs for quadrant 2? That would be the
Negative, positive.
negative, then positive. Negative, positive, right? Negative x's, positive y's. Quadrant 3 is my negative, and quadrant 4 is my positive negative. So for each rotation question, I always label my quadrant. That comes in really handy. So let's say I wanted to go positive 90 degrees, which is what direction? Positive 90?
Clockwise.
Counterclockwise. So if I were going to rotate this 90 degrees counterclockwise, I would start in quadrant 1 and end up where?
Wait, say it again?
If I were rotating 90 degrees counterclockwise, which is to the left, right? I would start in quadrant 1. Where would this triangle end up?
Two.
Good, in quadrant 2. So it's really simple. We're just moving from one quadrant to the next. So that would be a 90-degree rotation counterclockwise, positive 90 degrees. Okay, so we're just moving to one quadrant. If I did 180 and started in quadrant 1, where would I end up? All the way to 3. So I went 2 turns there to get to 180. Does it matter which way I go with 180?
No.
We both ended up in the same thing. So this could be clockwise or counterclockwise, doesn't matter. Okay, and then if I went a positive 270, positive 270 would take me how far?
All the way.
All the way to 4, right? Do you guys see an easier way that we could have gotten to that quadrant?
No.
What's an easier way I could have gotten to that same quadrant? Starting at 1?
Oh, rotate down.
90 degrees the other direction, right? So I could have just come right here and done a negative 90 degrees or 90 degrees clockwise. So do we all see that 270 and negative 90 are the same? Yes, just nod. So I rarely use 270. I'll always refer to it as the negative 90. But no, we can go just in the opposite direction there. Okay, so let's talk about some examples here. Can I move from here?
Yes.
Wait. Oops, I didn't wait. Okay, so look at our first example there.
Alright.
Brendan's saying go. Okay. So look at our first example here. This is a rotation around point O, which is the origin. So all of these we're going to be rotating. Let's pick a different color. Rotating around the origin. Rotate around origin. And this is a positive 90, so what direction does that tell me? Counterclockwise. Good. Counterclockwise. So hopefully you'll get to the point where it's really quick like that. Okay, so there's a way easier way to do this, I think, than the patty paper, especially when you don't have patty paper, and it's not having to memorize a rule. It's going to be using our quadrant. So I'm going to go ahead and do my signs for each quadrant. That's always the first step that I do for these. So positive, positive. What's quadrant 2? Negative, positive. What's quadrant 3? Negative, negative. And quadrant 4? Positive, negative. And you can label them 1, 2, 3, and 4 because I'll refer to them, but hopefully you know where those are. So your graph should look like mine. Each one, it is really important that you write down your quadrant so you don't make mistakes. Okay, so let's look at D, E, F first. Let's look at D, E, F first. Oh, sorry, we're on ABC, so let's look at ABC. Right now, it is crossing over quadrants 1 and 2, right?
Yes.
So if I had patty paper, let's think about it. Where would that go if I'm rotating it 90 degrees counterclockwise? It's going to be going here, right? So it's going to be crossing not 1 and 2 anymore. It would be crossing 2 and 3, right? So think about counterclockwise would be moving in the opposite direction. So we do know it's going to end up here. But again, we don't have patty paper on the EOC. So the best way to do it is to use kind of a rule. And it is to switch the X and Y. So please write that down. I'm going to switch X and Y. And then you're just going to match it to the right quadrant. So if you have a graph or graph paper, you can always do these rotations. Alright, so switching to X and Y means I take my point and flip it, but what we don't want to do is take the whole image and do it at one time. You want to focus on each point individually. So let's start with point A. Point A is in the negative positive quadrant, yes? If I rotate that point A 90 degrees counterclockwise, where's it going to land? Which is the what? The negative, negative. So I know that my answer here should be negative, negative. Another way we can do that is to maybe make a note off to the side. I know point A is going to be negative, negative. So I'm going to flip my point. Right now it's negative 2, 5. I'm going to flip it and put 5, 2. And then I said it needs to be negative, negative. So it's going to be negative 5, negative 2. Okay, so we can do this whole thing just by switching our points and matching the quadrants. Negative 5, negative 2. Alright, let's look at point B. Oh, sorry, and let's graph that first. So negative 5, negative 2 would be a what? Prime. Good. Okay, let's look at B. I'm going to go ahead, before I even do anything, I'm going to switch my point. So right now I'm at 5, 7. If I flip it, what's it going to say?
7, 5.
7, 5. And now I just need to figure out what quadrant it's going to land in. Brendan, please can you just know? So point B is in the positive, positive. If I rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise, it's going to be where? Negative, positive. So this should be negative 7, positive 5. Do you guys get that process?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and try that last one flip the point, decide where it's gonna end. Okay, I'm just coming around to see that answer. Okay, but match the quadrants, right? If C is in the positive, where's it gonna go? Yeah, so negative positive.
Oh, that's what I was put. So
Flip the point, so right now you left the sure sign, right? You have to flip them. So 3, 4 would become. You flip the actual number.
Really good.
So it would be like.
okay, sit down.
Okay, who thinks they got this one? Who thinks they got this one? Jazz? Me?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay.
What?
Michelle?
-4 and +3.
-4, +3. So we flipped the point and then matched it. I know I'm going to end up, point C would end up in the negative positive there. Questions with that?
No.
Okay, look at the one underneath. What's the only difference there? It's a -90, which tells me what direction.
It's going to the
Right.
Counterclockwise.
Clockwise. Clockwise. So DEF, if I'm going clockwise, it should end up overlapping now quadrants 3 and 4. So I'm gonna have you guys try that one on your own. I'll pause and I'll walk around while you're working on that so you can ask me questions.
Oh, yes. Welcome back, y'all.
Okay. So it is important that we're showing the graphs because these are all types of rigid motion. That means my figures are staying what? Staying what?
The same.
The same shape and size. So my images should look exactly the same. So it is important that we're graphing. There are some people still struggling, so I do want to go over this one more time. So if I'm going 90 degrees clockwise, that is to the right. That is to the right. So we want to look at each point individually. D is in the positive. If I go one quadrant to the right, it's going to be where? In the positive. So I take my point and flip it. A lot of people were forgetting to flip. So it's 5, 6, but I want it to be positive, negative. So it should be +5, -6. +5, -6, and I want to graph that. Okay, you can kind of, at this point, visualize it's going this direction. So E and F are now going to be in that negative quadrant. So right now, E is in the positive negative. It's going to go one to the right in the negative. So I'm going to flip my point. Just kind of ignore your signs. I'm going to put 2, 8, and I said it needs to be what signs?
-8 positive.
Negative.
What?
Negative.
Negative. Oh, so it's the same note.
We're moving into the negative. Same thing. So I'm going to graph -2, -8. That would be E prime. Same thing with F. It's going to be in the negative. So ignore your signs, just flip the number. So I'm going to write 2, 6, and then I know that it should be negative. So -2, -6, and then we can see that it has rotated 90 degrees. Okay, questions there? Nope. Okay, go ahead and flip to the back. This is your reference sheet, very similar to when we did reflections. We're going to kind of work through this. You'll do it independently.